Millionaire's black maid exposes wife's affair with gym instructor, and he finds true love with her. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Cameron Lancaster stood at the window of his Manhattan penthouse, looking down at the city lights below. At 45, he had everything money could buy: a successful investment firm, a stunning home, and a beautiful wife. But something felt empty inside him. His wife, Bianca, was hosting another one of her fancy dinner parties downstairs. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted up to his study. These parties had become more and more frequent lately, and Cameron found himself retreating to his office more often. "Mr. Lancaster," a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Sophia Ellis, their new housekeeper. She stood in the doorway with a stack of fresh towels. "I'm sorry to disturb you, sir." "It's fine, Sophia. Come in," Cameron said. There was something calming about Sophia's presence. Unlike the fake smiles and forced laughs downstairs, she had an honest, straightforward way about her. At 32, Sophia had taken this job to support her teenage siblings after their parents died in a car crash. She was smart and hardworking, and Cameron had noticed how efficiently she ran the household since starting 3 months ago. "Your wife asked me to remind you about the party," Sophia said, placing the towels in the bathroom. "She says the guests are asking for you." Cameron sighed. "Of course they are." He straightened his tie and headed for the door, but stopped when he heard Sophia gasp softly. She was standing by his desk where a phone had lit up with a message. It wasn't his phone, it was Bianca's. She must have left it there earlier. "I'm sorry, Mr. Lancaster," Sophia said quickly. "I didn't mean to see, but—" She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "What is it, Sophia?" Cameron asked, noticing how troubled she looked. "Sir, it's not my place, but—" Sophia hesitated. "The message that just came in. It's from Greg, your wife's personal trainer. It says he can't wait to see her tomorrow at their usual hotel." The words hit Cameron like a punch to the gut. Deep down, he'd suspected something was wrong in his marriage. Bianca had grown distant, always finding excuses to be away from home. But seeing actual proof was different. "Thank you for telling me, Sophia," he said quietly. "I appreciate your honesty." "I should go," Sophia said, heading for the door. "The guests—" "Wait," Cameron called after her. Would you keep an eye on things? I need to know what's really going on in my own home." Sophia nodded slowly. "Of course, Mr. Lancaster. But please remember, whatever happens, you deserve better than lies." Over the next few weeks, Cameron watched his perfect life crack like a mirror. Sophia discreetly kept him informed of Bianca's suspicious phone calls and mysterious appointments. He noticed how his wife barely looked at him anymore, always rushing off to yoga classes or charity meetings. One evening, Cameron came home early and found Sophia in tears in the kitchen. "What's wrong?" he asked, genuinely concerned. "I found this in Mrs. Lancaster's gym bag while doing laundry," Sophia said, pulling out a letter. "I know I shouldn't have read it, but Mr. Lancaster, it's from Greg. They've been planning to take your money and run away together." Cameron read the letter, his hands shaking. Greg and Bianca had been plotting for months. They'd been secretly transferring money from his accounts. They were planning to empty his bank accounts and disappear to South America. "I'm so sorry," Sophia whispered. "I wanted to tell you sooner, but I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Cameron asked. "Afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid you'd fire me. My siblings depend on this job," Sophia admitted. "But I couldn't keep quiet anymore. It's not right what they're doing to you." Cameron looked at Sophia, really looked at her for the first time. Here was someone who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by telling him the truth. While his glamorous wife was plotting to destroy him, this humble housekeeper was the only one looking out for him. "Thank you, Sophia," he said softly, "for being the one honest person in my life right now." That night, Cameron sat alone in his study, holding the letter that proved his wife's betrayal. His perfect life was falling apart, but somehow he felt more clear-headed than he had in years. Tomorrow, he would call his lawyer. Tomorrow, he would confront Bianca. But tonight, he just sat there thinking about truth, lies, and how sometimes the most genuine people come into your life when you least expect them. In the kitchen below, Sophia finished cleaning up from another of Bianca's parties. She couldn't help worrying about Cameron. She'd seen the pain in his eyes when he read that letter. She wished she could do more to help, but she knew this was just the beginning of what would surely be a messy, painful fight. All she could do was continue being honest and hope that somehow, someday, he would find happiness again. Little did either of them know, this was just the start of a story that would change both their lives forever. As the city lights twinkled outside, fate was already setting in motion events that would shake their worlds to the core. The next morning, Cameron woke up early and called his lawyer, Jack Thompson. They met at a quiet coffee shop far from the office, where Cameron showed him the letter Sophia had found. "This is serious, Cameron," Jack said, reading the letter carefully. "They've already taken $2 million from your accounts. We need to act fast." Cameron nodded, feeling sick to his stomach. "Freeze everything, every account, every credit card. I want Bianca cut off completely." While Cameron was meeting with his lawyer, Bianca was at her usual breakfast spot with Greg, her personal trainer. They sat at their favorite corner table, holding hands and planning their future. "Just a few more weeks," Bianca said, smiling. "Once we have enough money, we'll disappear to Brazil. Cameron won't know what hit him." But when she tried to pay for breakfast, her credit card was declined. Then another, and another. "What's going on?" she snapped at the waiter. She called the bank, but they told her all her cards had been frozen. That's when she knew Cameron had found out. Back at the mansion, Sophia was cleaning the living room when Bianca stormed in, her face red with anger. "You!" Bianca screamed, pointing at Sophia. "You told him, didn't you, you little snake?" Sophia stood her ground. "Mrs. Lancaster, I only did what was right. Mr. Lancaster deserved to know the truth." "You're fired!" Bianca shouted. "Pack your things and get out." "Actually," Cameron's voice came from the doorway, "she's not going anywhere." He walked into the room, followed by 2 security guards. "You're the one who needs to leave, Bianca." Bianca laughed, but there was fear in her eyes. "You can't throw me out. This is my house, too." "Not anymore," Cameron said calmly, handing her some papers. "Our prenup was very clear about infidelity. You get nothing. The house, the cars, the accounts, they're all in my name. And thanks to your little plot with Greg, I have proof of your affair and attempted theft. You'll regret this," Bianca hissed. She turned to Sophia. "And you think you're so perfect, don't you? Just wait until everyone finds out how you've been cozying up to my husband." "That's enough," Cameron's voice was sharp. "Security will escort you out. You have 1 hour to pack your personal belongings. Everything else stays." As the security guards led Bianca upstairs, Cameron turned to Sophia. "I'm sorry you had to see that, and I'm sorry for what she said about you." "It's okay, Mr. Lancaster," Sophia said quietly. "I knew there would be consequences when I told you the truth." "Call me Cameron," he said. "After everything that's happened, I think we can drop the formality." That afternoon, news of the Lancaster split spread through New York's high society like wildfire. Bianca's friends started calling, but most of them quickly changed sides when they learned about her plot to steal Cameron's money. Nobody wanted to be associated with a scandal like that. Greg, the personal trainer, disappeared as soon as he heard about the frozen accounts. He didn't even bother to collect his final paycheck from the gym. Bianca was left alone, checking into a hotel with just her clothes and jewelry. Back at the mansion, Cameron sat in his study, feeling strangely peaceful despite everything. Sophia brought him a cup of coffee, made just the way he liked it. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to," she replied. "You've had a rough day." "Why did you do it, Sophia?" he asked suddenly. "Why did you tell me about Bianca? You could have just kept quiet, kept your head down." Sophia thought for a moment. "Because everyone deserves to know the truth, even when it hurts. And because I couldn't stand watching her hurt you like that." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a moment of understanding, of connection. But Sophia quickly looked away. "I should get back to work," she said, heading for the door. "Sophia," Cameron called after her. "Thank you for everything." That night, as Cameron tried to sleep in his big, empty bedroom, he couldn't stop thinking about how his life had changed in just 24 hours. His marriage was over. His wife had betrayed him. His perfect world had crumbled. But somehow he felt lighter. The truth, as painful as it was, had set him free. And in the middle of all this chaos, one person had stood by him, had risked everything to do what was right. In her small apartment across town, Sophia tucked her siblings into bed. Her sister Maria, 16, looked up at her worriedly. "Are you really going to lose your job?" Maria asked. "Because of what happened with Mrs. Lancaster?" Sophia smiled reassuringly. "No, sweetie, Mr. Lancaster, Cameron, he's keeping me on. Everything's going to be okay." But as Sophia lay in her own bed later, she wondered if things would really be okay. She'd seen the way Cameron looked at her today. She'd felt something too, something that both thrilled and terrified her. "Don't be silly," she whispered to herself. "He's your employer. That's all he'll ever be." But deep down, she knew things were changing. The carefully ordered world they both lived in was shifting, and neither of them could predict where these changes would lead. 2 weeks after Bianca's departure, the Lancaster mansion felt different. The tense atmosphere was gone, replaced by a quiet calm. But peace never lasts long in New York high society. One morning, Cameron was reading the newspaper when he nearly choked on his coffee. There on page 6 was a photo of him and Sophia walking into the mansion together. The headline read, "Lancaster Scandal. Did the maid break up his marriage?" "Have you seen this?" Cameron asked when Sophia came in with fresh coffee. Sophia's hands shook as she read the article. Bianca had given an interview, claiming she'd caught Cameron and Sophia having an affair months ago. "She's trying to ruin my reputation," Sophia said, tears in her eyes. "Nobody will hire me after this. How will I take care of my siblings?" "I won't let that happen," Cameron said firmly. He reached for her hand without thinking. "We'll fight back." But fighting back wasn't easy. That afternoon, Sophia overheard 2 other housekeepers whispering about her in the kitchen. "I always knew she was after his money," one said. "Playing the innocent act, but she's worse than Mrs. Lancaster." Sophia ran to the bathroom, crying. When she came out, she found Cameron waiting in the hallway. "I heard them," he said. "I fired them both. I won't have people spreading lies in my house." "Maybe I should leave," Sophia said quietly. "Find another job. These rumors are hurting you too." "No," Cameron said quickly. "I need you here." Their eyes met, and he added softly, "I trust you, Sophia. You're the only one I trust." That evening, Cameron's sister, Patricia, visited. She was a sharp-tongued socialite who'd never approved of Bianca. "Really, Cameron," Patricia said, waving the newspaper. "The help? What were you thinking?" "Nothing happened between me and Sophia," Cameron insisted. "She's an honest person who helped me discover Bianca's theft. That's all." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Is it? I see the way you look at her, and honestly, she's a vast improvement over Bianca. But darling, she's the maid. Think of the scandal." After Patricia left, Cameron found Sophia in the garden, sitting alone on a bench. She'd been crying again. "I'm so sorry," he said, sitting beside her. "This is all my fault." "No, it's Bianca's fault," Sophia replied. "She's angry that her plan failed, so she's trying to hurt us both." "Us," Cameron repeated softly. The word hung in the air between them. "Mr. Lancaster." "Cameron," Sophia began, "I need to tell you something. My sister Maria got into Columbia University. Early admission for next fall." "That's wonderful news," Cameron smiled. "Yes, but..." Sophia's voice trembled. "I can't afford it. Even with this job, it's too much. I was going to ask for a loan, but now with these rumors..." "I'll pay for it," Cameron said immediately. "All of it. Consider it a thank you for saving me from Bianca's theft." "I can't accept that," Sophia protested. "People will say..." "Let them talk," Cameron interrupted. "Maria deserves this chance, and you deserve to see your sister succeed." Sophia looked at him, really looked at him. In that moment, something changed between them. The wall of employer and employee began to crack, but they weren't alone in the garden. Neither of them noticed the camera lens peeking through the hedges, capturing their intimate conversation. The next morning, Bianca sat in her hotel suite, looking at the photos her private investigator had taken. She smiled wickedly. "Perfect," she said, picking up her phone. "Get me my lawyer. I'm going to contest the prenup. I can prove Cameron was having an affair with the maid all along." Meanwhile, across town, Greg the personal trainer was meeting with a tabloid reporter. "Oh, I can tell you everything about Cameron Lancaster and his maid," Greg said, counting the cash the reporter had given him. "It started long before Mrs. Lancaster and I got together. She was devastated when she found out. Back at the mansion, Cameron was in his study when his lawyer Jack called. 'We have a problem,' Jack said. 'Bianca's contesting the prenup. She claims you and Sophia were having an affair before the divorce. She has photos, witnesses.'" Cameron felt his world spinning. "It's all lies. True or not, this could get messy," Jack warned. "Maybe you should distance yourself from Sophia for a while." After hanging up, Cameron stood at his window, watching Sophia tend to the garden below. She looked up and waved, smiling that honest, beautiful smile that had become the brightest part of his days. Distance himself from her? The thought made his heart ache, but if he didn't, she could lose everything. Her reputation, her career, her ability to help her siblings. That night, Cameron lay awake, torn between his growing feelings for Sophia and his need to protect her. Down the hall, Sophia also lay awake, holding a college acceptance letter for her sister and wondering why doing the right thing had led to so much trouble. Neither of them knew that tomorrow would bring even bigger challenges, because Bianca wasn't just after money anymore. She wanted revenge. and she was willing to destroy them both to get it. The morning headlines hit like a bomb. Lancaster love triangle. The whole story. The article featured an exclusive interview with Greg, filled with lies about Cameron and Sophia's supposed affair. Cameron's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Business partners, board members, friends, everyone wanted answers. But he couldn't focus on any of that. His mind was on Sophia, who hadn't come to work that morning. She called in sick, Mrs. Reynolds, the cook, told him. But sir, I saw her sister Maria crying at the bus stop. The kids at school are being cruel about the newspaper stories. Cameron grabbed his car keys. He knew where he had to go. When he reached Sophia's small apartment building, he found her sitting on the front steps, looking defeated. She'd been crying. "You shouldn't be here," she said when she saw him. "They'll take more pictures." "I don't care," Cameron replied, sitting beside her. "Talk to me, Sophia. What happened?" "Maria came home from school early," Sophia explained, wiping her eyes. "The other kids were showing her the article saying terrible things. She asked me if it was true, if I broke up your marriage." "We both know that's not true," Cameron said gently. "Do we?" Sophia looked at him with pain in her eyes. "These feelings between us, maybe they were there all along. Maybe that's why I was so quick to tell you about Bianca." "No," Cameron said firmly. "You told me because you're honest and brave. What I feel for you now, that came later, after I saw who you really are." They sat in silence for a moment, his words hanging in the air. Finally, Sophia spoke. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I need to resign." "Sophia, please." "My siblings need stability," she continued. "I'll find another job, maybe in another city where nobody knows about the scandal." Before Cameron could respond, a sleek black car pulled up. Bianca stepped out, looking elegant and dangerous in designer clothes. "How sweet," she said, walking toward them. The millionaire checking on his maid. "Tell me, Cameron, did you come to give her more hush money?" "Leave her alone, Bianca," Cameron warned, standing up. "Oh, I don't think so." Bianca smiled coldly. "My lawyer says this little scene is perfect for our case." The devoted employer rushing to his maid's home. "What would a jury think?" "They'd think you're desperate," a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Patricia, Cameron's sister, getting out of her own car. "What are you doing here?" Cameron asked, surprised. "Helping my foolish brother," Patricia replied. She turned to Bianca. "I have something you might want to see." Patricia pulled out her phone and played a video. It showed Bianca and Greg in a heated argument outside their hotel. "You promised me millions," Bianca shouted in the video. "Now the accounts are frozen and you're talking to reporters." "What choice did I have?" Greg yelled back. "Lancaster's lawyers are breathing down my neck. At least the tabloids pay cash." "You idiot!" Bianca screamed. "We need them to believe our story about Cameron and the maid. That's the only way I can break the prenup." The video ended. Bianca's face had gone pale. "Where did you get that?" she demanded. "I had you followed," Patricia said simply. "I never trusted you, even when Cameron married you. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop the prenup challenge. You're going to tell the press you lied about Cameron and Sophia, and you're going to disappear. Or what? Or this video goes public." Patricia smiled. "I wonder how sympathetic those reporters will be when they see you plotting to frame an innocent woman." Bianca's composure cracked. Without another word, she got back in her car and sped away. Patricia turned to Sophia, who had watched everything in shocked silence. "I owe you an apology," Patricia said. "I misjudged you. Anyone who risks everything to protect my brother deserves better than what Bianca did to you." "Thank you," Sophia said softly. "Now," Patricia continued, "about Maria's college tuition. I'm setting up a scholarship fund through my foundation. Completely legitimate. No strings attached. Will that help with the rumors?" Sophia nodded, tears in her eyes. After Patricia left, Cameron and Sophia sat together on the steps again. "I still think I should resign," Sophia said quietly. "Why?" Cameron asked. "Bianca can't hurt us anymore." "Because," Sophia took a deep breath, "because every time I see you, my feelings get stronger, and that terrifies me." Cameron reached for her hand. "Then maybe it's time we stopped being afraid." Inside the apartment, Maria watched through the window as her sister and Cameron talked. For the first time in weeks, she saw Sophia smile, really smile. But across town in her hotel room, Bianca was making one last phone call. "I don't care about the prenup anymore," she told someone. "I want them to suffer. And I know exactly how to make that happen. How quickly can you find Sophia's ex-boyfriend, the one who broke her heart and left her with all those debts?" The war wasn't over. It was just entering a new phase. And this time, Bianca was playing for keeps. A week after Bianca's confrontation, things were starting to calm down at the Lancaster mansion. The newspapers had moved on to other scandals, and Sophia had returned to work. But now something was different between her and Cameron. Stolen glances, gentle touches, moments of silence filled with unspoken words. One morning, Sophia was arranging flowers in the living room when Mrs. Reynolds rushed in. "Sophia, there's someone at the door asking for you," the cook said, looking worried. "A man. He says his name is Marcus." The vase Sophia was holding crashed to the floor. Her face went white. "Marcus, are you sure?" "Who's Marcus?" Cameron asked, walking in from his study. Before Sophia could answer, a tall, handsome man in an expensive suit strolled into the room like he owned it. "Hello, Sophie," he said with a charming smile. "Long time no see. What are you doing here?" Sophia's voice trembled. "Can't a man visit his ex-fiancée?" Marcus looked around the mansion appreciatively. "Nice place you're working in. Very nice indeed." Cameron stepped forward. "I'm Cameron Lancaster." "And you are?" "Marcus Rivera," the man said smoothly. "Sophie and I were engaged 3 years ago, until she ran away a week before the wedding. Broke my heart." "That's not what happened," Sophia whispered. "You know, that's not true." Cameron saw the fear in Sophia's eyes and felt his chest tighten. "I think you should leave." "Of course," Marcus smiled. "But Sophie, we should catch up. How about dinner tonight? For old time's sake." "She's busy," Cameron said firmly. "Shouldn't Sophie answer for herself?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Unless there's something going on here, the newspapers were right about you too." "Get out!" Cameron's voice was cold. "Now." After Marcus left, Sophia collapsed onto the sofa, shaking. "Want to tell me what that was about?" Cameron asked gently, sitting beside her. Tears rolled down Sophia's cheeks. "Marcus was my fiancé. He seemed perfect, charming, successful, everything a girl could want. But it was all lies." "What happened?" "He was a con man." Sophia wiped her eyes. "He targeted women, made them fall in love with him, then stole everything they had. When I found out, I confronted him. He got angry, violent. I ran away and changed my phone number, but not before he'd emptied my bank account and left me with huge debts. That's why you needed this job so badly," Cameron realized, "to pay off those debts and take care of your siblings." Sophia nodded. "I worked 3 jobs at first. Finally paid off the last debt just before I started here." Cameron took her hand. "He can't hurt you anymore. I won't let him." "You don't know Marcus," Sophia said. "He never gives up once he has a target, and now he's back." That afternoon, in a small cafe across town, Marcus met with Bianca. "Well?" she asked eagerly. "You were right," Marcus smiled. "Lancaster's clearly in love with her, and Sophie's still scared of me. This will be easy. Remember our deal," Bianca said. "I don't care about the money. I want them both destroyed." "Don't worry," Marcus assured her. "By the time I'm done, your ex-husband will lose everything. His money, his reputation, and his precious maid." Back at the mansion, Cameron was in his study making calls. Within hours, his private investigators had uncovered Marcus's whole history, all the women he'd conned, all the fake identities he'd used. "We can have him arrested," Cameron told Sophia that evening. "No," she said quickly. "He'll twist things around, make me look like I was part of his cons. He's good at that. Besides, there's no proof. He made sure of that." "Then what do you want to do?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted, "but I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid." Cameron moved closer to her. "Then don't run. Stay. Let me help you fight him." "Why?" Sophia looked into his eyes. "Why do you care so much?" "You know why," Cameron said softly. Their faces were inches apart. Cameron leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But she didn't. When their lips met, it was gentle, tender, full of unspoken feelings. Then Sophia's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Sweet kiss, Sophie. Wonder what the newspapers would pay for these photos. Or maybe I should send them to your sister's new college. M." Sophia showed Cameron the text, along with the photos Marcus had somehow taken through the study window. "I told you," she said, fighting back tears. "He never gives up." Cameron held her close. "Neither do I. We'll face him together." But as night fell over the mansion, neither of them knew that Marcus and Bianca's plan was already in motion. Tomorrow, a bomb would drop that would test their love in ways they never imagined. Because Marcus hadn't just been watching them today, he'd been planting evidence that would make it look like Sophia and Cameron had been working together all along, conning Bianca out of her money. And in the morning, that evidence would land on the desk of a very interested district attorney. The police arrived at the Lancaster mansion at 7 a.m. Cameron was having coffee in the kitchen with Sophia when they heard the doorbell. "Mr. Lancaster!" A stern-faced detective showed his badge. "We have a warrant to search the premises. We also need to ask you and Miss Ellis some questions." Sophia's hands trembled as she watched police officers spread through the house. One of them was carrying an evidence bag with papers inside. "What's this about?" Cameron demanded. "We've received evidence suggesting you and Miss Ellis conspired to defraud Mrs. Lancaster of her rightful assets," the detective explained. "Bank records showing unusual transfers, emails between you two dating back months before the divorce." "That's impossible," Sophia protested. "We never—" "Miss Ellis," another detective cut in, "can you explain why your brother Tommy received a $50,000 payment from Mr. Lancaster's private account 3 months before Mrs. Lancaster was asked to leave?" Sophia's face went pale. "I don't have a brother named Tommy. According to these documents you do," the detective held up some papers, "and he received regular payments from Mr. Lancaster for months." Cameron's lawyer, Jack, arrived just as the police were finishing their search. He pulled Cameron aside. "This is bad," Jack said quietly. "Someone's done a masterful job of creating a paper trail. It looks like you and Sophia were working together for months to push Bianca out and steal her share of the assets." "It's all fake," Cameron insisted. "Marcus and Bianca are behind this." "Maybe so, but proving that won't be easy." Jack looked grim. "The DA is already talking about pressing charges: fraud, conspiracy, money laundering." Across town, Bianca sat in Marcus's luxury apartment, watching the morning news coverage of the police raid. "Beautiful work," she said, raising her champagne glass. "Those fake documents you created look completely real." "Years of practice," Marcus smiled. "By the time they figure out their forgeries, it'll be too late. Their reputations will be destroyed." "And the best part?" Bianca laughed. "Cameron's board of directors is meeting right now to discuss removing him as CEO. After all, they can't have a suspected fraudster running the company." Back at the mansion, Sophia was packing her things, crying. "What are you doing?" Cameron asked from her doorway. "I have to leave," she said. "These charges, they'll ruin you. Your company, your reputation." "I don't care about any of that." "Well, I do." Sophia turned to face him. "I care about you too much to watch your life fall apart because of me." Cameron crossed the room and took her hands. "Listen to me. Marcus and Bianca want us to fall apart. If you leave, they win. But your company can survive without me for a while. What I can't survive is losing you." He pulled her close. "I love you, Sophia. I should have said it before, but I was afraid. I'm not afraid anymore." Sophia looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "I love you too. That's why I can't let you sacrifice everything for me." "You're not letting me do anything." Cameron smiled. "I'm choosing this. Choosing us. We'll fight them together." Their tender moment was interrupted by Maria bursting into the room. "Sophia, you need to see this." She held up her phone, showing a social media post. It was a photo of Marcus meeting with Bianca, clearly taken recently. "Where did you get this?" Sophia asked. "I followed him," Maria admitted. "After he showed up here, I remembered what he did to you before. I've been taking pictures every time I saw him meeting with that woman." Cameron grabbed his phone and called Jack. "Get back here now, we might have the evidence we need." But they weren't the only ones making moves. Downtown, Marcus was meeting with the district attorney. "I have more evidence against Lancaster and his maid," Marcus said, sliding a folder across the desk. "But I want a deal, full immunity for my testimony." The DA looked through the papers. "This is quite compelling. But why come forward now?" "Conscience," Marcus said smoothly. "And Sophie broke my heart. She used the same con on Lancaster that she tried with me." As evening fell, Cameron and Sophia sat in his study with Jack, going through Maria's photos and building their defense. "It's a start," Jack said, "but we need more. We need to prove those documents are forgeries." "I think I know how," Sophia said quietly, "but it's dangerous. Marcus keeps records of all his cons. It's his insurance policy. If we could get into his apartment—" "No," Cameron said firmly. "It's too risky." "It's our only chance," Sophia insisted. "I know where he would hide them. I lived with him, remember?" Before they could argue further, Cameron's sister Patricia burst in. "Turn on the news," she said breathlessly. "Now." On the TV, Marcus was giving an interview, playing the role of the heartbroken ex-fiancé perfectly. "I had to come forward," he said, wiping away fake tears. "When I saw history repeating itself, saw Sophie Ellis using the same techniques on Cameron Lancaster that she used on me, I couldn't stay silent. Cameron switched off the TV. The room was quiet for a moment. "Well," Patricia said finally, "I hope you have a plan because tomorrow morning the board votes on whether to remove you as CEO." Cameron looked at Sophia, then at Jack. "We have a plan, but we'll need your help, Patricia. All of it has to happen tonight." As they began to outline their dangerous scheme, none of them noticed the small red light blinking under Cameron's desk, a listening device broadcasting everything to Marcus's phone. In his apartment, Marcus smiled as he listened. "Oh, Sophie," he whispered, "walking right into my trap, just like old times." The night was about to become a dangerous game of cat and mouse, with everything Cameron and Sophia held dear hanging in the balance. The plan was simple, but dangerous. While Marcus was scheduled to appear at a late-night charity event with the district attorney, Sophia would enter his apartment to find his records. Cameron and Patricia would attend the event to keep an eye on Marcus, while Jack waited in a car outside Marcus's building with Maria's photos, ready to act if anything went wrong. "I don't like this," Cameron said as he adjusted his tie for the charity event. "What if something happens to you?" "I lived with Marcus for a year," Sophia reminded him. "I know where he keeps everything. His little black book with all his cons, the real bank records, everything." Patricia stepped in, elegant in her evening gown. "The car's ready. And Sophia, I had my personal security team sweep the building. Marcus lives on the 10th floor, apartment 10B. They'll make sure no one bothers you." As they prepared to leave, Cameron pulled Sophia close and kissed her. "Be careful," he whispered. "I can't lose you." At the charity event, Marcus was charming the crowd, particularly the district attorney. He stopped mid-conversation when he saw Cameron and Patricia arrive. "Well, well," he smirked. "Brave of you to show your face in public, Lancaster." "I have nothing to hide," Cameron replied calmly, though his heart was racing, thinking about Sophia. Across town, Sophia used the key card Patricia's security team had obtained to enter Marcus's building. The elevator ride to the 10th floor felt endless. She knew she had about 2 hours before Marcus would return. Inside his apartment, everything was exactly as she expected. Expensive but soulless, just like Marcus himself. She went straight to his home office and began searching. Back at the charity event, Marcus's phone buzzed. He smiled as he read the silent alert from his hidden cameras. Right on schedule, Sophia was walking into his trap. "Excuse me," he said to the DA. "I need to make a quick call." In the apartment, Sophia found Marcus's safe hidden behind a painting, just where it had been in their old place. Some people never change their habits. She carefully entered the combination: his mother's birthday, his one sentimental weakness. Inside, she found exactly what she was looking for: a leather-bound book and USB drive. Her hands shook as she photographed page after page of Marcus's criminal records. Suddenly, the lights went out. At the charity event, Cameron was making small talk with board members when he saw Marcus slip away with a strange smile. His instincts screamed that something was wrong. "Call Jack," he whispered to Patricia. "Now." In the darkness of Marcus's apartment, Sophia heard footsteps. But they weren't coming from the front door, they were coming from the bedroom. "Did you really think I'd leave you alone in my apartment, Sophie?" Bianca's voice came from the darkness. "After all the trouble we went through to set this up?" The lights came on. Bianca stood there with 2 large men in suits. "Marcus sends his regards," she smiled. "He thought you might try something like this. That's why we prepared a little surprise." "What do you want, Bianca?" Sophia asked, trying to stay calm. "Want? I want you to sign this confession." Bianca held up some papers. "Admitting that you and Cameron planned this whole thing from the start, that you seduced him, helped him push me out, all of it. And if I don't, then these gentlemen will find your sister Maria. Sweet girl. It would be a shame if something happened to ruin her college chances." Sophia felt sick. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Bianca showed her phone, displaying a photo of Maria leaving her school that very afternoon. "Sign the papers or she'll have an unfortunate accident." Meanwhile, Cameron had left the charity event and was racing across town in his car. Patricia had called her security team, but they weren't responding. "Faster," he urged his driver. "Something's wrong." Back in the apartment, Sophia's hand trembled as she reached for the papers. She couldn't risk Maria's safety. But before she could sign, the apartment door burst open. Jack rushed in, followed by police officers. "Drop the papers, Mrs. Lancaster," Jack commanded, "and tell your friends to step away from Miss Ellis." "You have no right to be here," Bianca protested. "Actually, we do," said a familiar voice. The district attorney walked in, followed by Marcus in handcuffs. "We've been building a case against Mr. Rivera for months. Tonight's little performance gave us everything we needed. Cameron arrived moments later, running straight to Sophia. "Are you okay?" he asked, holding her tight. "I'm fine," she assured him. "But how?" Patricia stepped in, looking satisfied. "Let's just say Marcus isn't the only one who can plant listening devices. That one under his desk at the charity venue caught every word of his conversation with Bianca about their trap." "And Maria?" Sophia asked anxiously. "Safe at home," Jack assured her. "The photo was old. We've had police protection on your siblings since this started." As the police led Bianca away, she turned to Sophia with hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over," she spat. "People like you don't belong in our world. You'll never be accepted." "You're wrong," Cameron said firmly, taking Sophia's hand. "She already is." Later that night, back at the mansion, Cameron and Sophia sat in the garden where they had first begun to fall in love. "The DA dropped all charges," Cameron told her. "Marcus's records proved he and Bianca planned everything. The board has already voted to keep me as CEO." "I still can't believe it's over," Sophia said softly. "Not everything is over," Cameron smiled, getting down on one knee. "Some things are just beginning. That is, if you'll have me." Sophia's eyes filled with tears as he pulled out a ring, not flashy like Bianca's had been, but elegant and sincere, just like their love. But before she could answer, a gunshot shattered the night. Because in their moment of triumph, they'd forgotten one thing. Marcus and Bianca weren't working alone, and their silent partner was about to reveal himself. The gunshot echoed through the garden. Cameron fell forward, blood spreading across his shoulder. Sophia screamed as dark figures emerged from the shadows. "Hello, little brother," a familiar voice said. "Sorry to interrupt the proposal." "Alexander?" Cameron looked up in shock at his older brother. "What are you doing?" Alexander Lancaster stepped into the light holding a gun. He looked exactly like Cameron, but his eyes were cold and hard. "What am I doing?" Alexander laughed bitterly. "I'm taking back what should have been mine all along." Security guards rushed out, but Alexander's men already had them covered. "Get him inside," Sophia told the guards, helping Cameron to his feet. "He needs a doctor." "How touching," Alexander sneered. "The maid giving orders in my family's house." Once inside, as the doctor treated Cameron's wound, Alexander paced the living room with his gun still drawn. "You never understood, did you?" Alexander said to Cameron. "Dad always liked you better. Gave you control of the company even though I'm the oldest. Cameron has better judgment," he said. "Cameron thinks of others." "Made me sick." "So you worked with Bianca?" Cameron winced as the doctor cleaned his wound. "From the start," Alexander smiled. "I introduced her to you, remember? She was supposed to bleed you dry slowly, but she got greedy. Then this maid ruined everything." "Her name is Sophia," Cameron said through gritted teeth. "I don't care what her name is," Alexander shouted. "Do you know how long I've waited? Watching you play the perfect son, the perfect CEO? When Bianca's plan failed, I had to find Marcus, set up the fraud charges. But you survived that too." Sophia stood protectively near Cameron. "The police will be here any minute." "The police?" Alexander laughed. "They're busy with a major emergency across town. Amazing what you can arrange with enough money." Patricia suddenly walked in, surprising everyone. "Drop the gun, Alex," she said calmly. "Stay out of this, sister," Alexander warned. "I can't do that," Patricia replied, "especially after I found these in your office." She held up a stack of papers. Alexander's face went pale. "Where did you get those?" "While everyone was focused on Marcus and Bianca, I had my own investigation running," Patricia said. "Money laundering, insider trading, deals with drug cartels. You've been very busy, big brother." "You're bluffing," Alexander said, but his hand shook. "Am I?" Patricia smiled. "Check your phone. Those documents are already with the FBI. I sent them an hour ago." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. "It's over, Alex," Cameron said softly. "Let it go." "Over?" Alexander turned the gun towards Sophia. "Maybe, but I can still hurt you like you hurt me." Everything happened in slow motion. Alexander fired. Cameron leaped forward despite his injury, but someone else was faster. Maria, who had been hidden behind the curtains, threw a heavy vase at Alexander's head. The gun went off, bullet hitting the ceiling as he stumbled. Security guards rushed in, tackling Alexander. The FBI burst through the doors moments later. "Alexander Lancaster," an agent announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and racketeering." As they led Alexander away, he looked back at Cameron with pure hatred. "You ruined everything," he spat. "You and that maid. I'll get out someday, and when I do—" "Goodbye, Alex," Patricia cut him off coldly. To the FBI agent, she added, "I have more documents in my car, years of evidence." Later that night, after Cameron's wound had been properly treated and the FBI had gone, the family gathered in the living room. "How did you know?" Cameron asked Patricia. "About Alex." "I've been watching him for years," she admitted. "After what he did to his first wife, I knew he was dangerous. I just didn't have proof until now." "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me?" Patricia asked sadly. "You always want to see the best in people, little brother, even when they don't deserve it." Sophia sat beside Cameron, holding his hand. "What happens now?" "Well," Cameron smiled, pulling out the ring again, "I believe I was in the middle of something before we were interrupted." "Really?" Sophia laughed through tears. "After all this, you still want to—" "More than ever," Cameron said softly. "Life's too short to waste time. Sophia Ellis, will you marry me?" Before she could answer, Maria cleared her throat. "Actually," the teenager said, "there's something you need to know first. Something about our family. And yours." Maria pulled out an old photograph. In it, a young woman who looked exactly like Sophia stood next to Cameron and Alexander's father. "I found this while going through Mom's old things," Maria explained. "There's a letter with it. Mom, she worked for your father 30 years ago. They were in love, but—" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Just when they thought all the secrets were revealed, the biggest one of all came to light. Because if that photograph meant what they thought it meant, Cameron and Sophia's love was either destined to be or destined for heartbreak. The old photograph lay on the coffee table between them. Cameron couldn't stop staring at it. The woman looked so much like Sophia, it was uncanny, and the way his father was looking at her. "There's more," Maria said, pulling out a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. "Mum kept everything." Sophia's hands trembled as she opened the first letter. "These are from your father," she said to Cameron. "To my mother, Eleanor. Read it," Cameron said softly. "My dearest Eleanor," Sophia began reading. "Another day without seeing your smile feels like torture. But you're right, we must be careful. Elizabeth suspects something, and with the baby coming—" "The baby?" Patricia leaned forward. "Alexander was already born then." "Keep reading," Maria urged. Sophia continued. "I wish things were different. I wish I could give you and our child the life you deserve. But Elizabeth's father owns half the company. If I leave her now, everything I've built will be destroyed. I'm not afraid for myself, but Alexander needs his inheritance secure. Please forgive me, my love. I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of, even if we can't be together." The room was silent when Sophia finished reading. "There's a birth certificate." Maria pulled out another paper. "For Elena's baby, a girl. Our mother," Sophia whispered. Cameron stood up, pacing the room. "This means you're my niece," Patricia finished. "Sophia is Alexander's niece, and your niece too. That's why Mom never told us about our family," Sophia said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "She was protecting us, protecting our father's secret." Cameron sank into a chair, the engagement ring heavy in his pocket. Everything made sense now. Why his father had been so generous to Elena's family from a distance. Why he'd set up trust funds for her grandchildren that they never knew about. "I have to go," Sophia stood suddenly. "I need time to think." "Sophia, wait." Cameron reached for her. "Don't," she pulled away. "Please, this changes everything." After Sophia left with Maria, Patricia turned to her brother. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Cameron admitted. "I love her. That hasn't changed. But she's family," Patricia said gently. "Is she?" Cameron stood up. "These letters, that birth certificate, they're 30 years old. We need to be sure." The next morning, Cameron met with Jack at his law office. "I need you to run DNA tests," Cameron said, discreetly. "Compare my DNA with Sophia's." "Are you sure you want to know?" Jack asked. "I have to know." Across town, Sophia sat in her apartment with Maria, looking through more of their mother's things. "She left us a letter too," Maria said, pulling out an envelope. "She wanted us to open it if we ever discovered the truth." Sophia read their mother's words through tears. "My darling daughters, if you're reading this, you've learned about your grandfather, Richard Lancaster. I want you to know I never regretted our love, but I did regret letting him push me away with money and promises. I should have fought for us, for our family. Don't make my mistake. Don't let fear of what others might think stop you from following your heart." Meanwhile, at the police station, Alexander was meeting with his lawyer when an orderly brought him lunch. "Time for your medication," the orderly said. As soon as the lawyer left, Alexander smiled at the orderly. "Took you long enough." "Sorry, boss," the man replied quietly, But everything's ready. Tonight, during the transfer to federal custody, good. Alexander's eyes gleamed. Make sure there are no survivors, especially not our dear brother and his precious Sophia. Back at the mansion, Cameron was going through his father's old study when he found a hidden compartment in the desk. Inside was a letter addressed to him, dated just before his father's death. "My son," it read, "if you're reading this, you've discovered my greatest sin and my greatest blessing. Elena's daughter Sophia gave birth to 2 beautiful girls before she died. The oldest, Sophia, has her grandmother's spirit and strength. I've watched over them from afar, too much of a coward to claim them as my own blood. But now I need you to protect them, Cameron. Not out of obligation, but because they deserve to know their family. All of it." The letter ended with a postscript that made Cameron's heart stop. P.S. Before you wonder, because I know you will, Eleanor's daughter Sophia married a man named James Ellis. The girls are his children, not your brothers. They're not Lancasters by blood. I kept this secret to protect them from Elizabeth's family, but they're your father's secret, not your niece's. Follow your heart, son. Don't make my mistakes. Cameron grabbed his phone to call Sophia, but it was dead. The power in the mansion suddenly went out. In the darkness, he heard footsteps. Too many footsteps. Alexander's men had come, and somewhere in the city, Sophia was reading the rest of her mother's letter, racing toward the mansion, unaware she was heading straight into a trap. Because Alexander hadn't just planned an escape, he'd planned a bloodbath, and this time he was determined to destroy not just Cameron's happiness, but the entire Lancaster legacy. The mansion was dark when Sophia arrived. Too dark. Her heart pounding, she pulled out her phone to call Cameron, but there was no signal. Inside, Cameron was trapped in his father's study with 3 of Alexander's men outside the door. He'd managed to send a quick text to Patricia before his phone died. "Alex's men here, get help. Come out, little brother." Alexander's voice echoed through the halls. "Let's finish this family reunion." Sophia crept in through the kitchen entrance, the one she'd used countless times as a housekeeper. She could hear voices, movement upstairs. Then she heard Cameron shout in pain. Without thinking, she grabbed a knife from the kitchen and headed toward the sound. In the study, Alexander's men had broken down the door. Cameron was on his knees, blood trickling from a fresh cut on his forehead. "You know what's funny?" Alexander stood over him. "If you'd just died when I shot you in the garden, this would all be over, but no, you had to survive. Just like you always have to win." "It was never about winning," Cameron said. "That's what you never understood." "Shut up," Alexander kicked him. "You took everything from me, the company, Dad's love, and now you're trying to bring these illegitimate brats into our family." "They're not illegitimate," Cameron managed to say. "They're not even Lancasters. Dad left me a letter explaining everything." Alexander laughed. "Nice try, but it doesn't matter anymore. You'll all die tonight, starting with your precious Sophia when she walks right into our trap." "Too late," Sophia's voice came from the doorway. "I'm already here." Before anyone could react, the lights suddenly blazed on. The windows crashed inward as FBI tactical teams swung in on ropes. Patricia's voice boomed through a megaphone from outside. "The mansion is surrounded. Drop your weapons." Chaos erupted. Alexander grabbed Sophia, pressing a gun to her head. "Back off," he screamed, "or I'll kill her." "No, you won't," said a calm voice. Mrs. Reynolds, the cook, stepped into the room holding a taser. "Not my girl." She fired. Alexander convulsed and fell, taking Sophia down with him. In the confusion, one of his men fired wildly. Cameron dove forward, covering Sophia with his body. The FBI swarmed in. Within minutes, Alexander and his men were in custody. "Are you okay?" Cameron helped Sophia up. "You're bleeding." She touched his forehead gently. "I've had worse," he smiled. "But there's something you need to know about your family." "I know," Sophia interrupted. "I found Mom's letter. We're not really related." "You knew? But you still came?" "Of course I came." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I love you. Related or not, that never changed." Patricia walked in looking satisfied. "Alexander's going away for a long time. We found evidence of 6 murder plots in his phone, plus the prison break plan." "How did you know to bring the FBI?" Cameron asked. "Maria called me right after Sophia left for the mansion," Patricia explained. "She'd seen one of Alexander's men watching their apartment. We've been tracking his people for weeks, waiting for him to make a move." Mrs. Reynolds joined them, still holding her taser. "Nobody messes with my family," she said firmly. "Blood-related or not." Later that night, after the FBI had gone and the mansion was quiet again, Cameron and Sophia stood in the garden where everything had started. "I'm sorry I ran earlier," Sophia said. "When we thought we were related, I was scared. I understand. Cameron took her hand. But now nothing stands in our way. No family secrets, no criminals, no scandals. Just us, Sophia smiled. Cameron got down on one knee for the third time. Sophia Ellis, I've loved you through every crisis, every revelation, every moment of doubt. Will you marry me? Yes, Sophia whispered. Yes, yes, yes. As they kissed, Patricia watched from the window, smiling. Maria stood beside her, holding their mother's letters. Should we tell them? Maria asked. Tell them what? That Mom's letter mentioned a hidden fortune? Something about bearer bonds in a Swiss bank? Patricia laughed. Let's give them tonight. Adventures can wait until tomorrow. 1 year later, the gardens of the Lancaster mansion were again filled with flowers, but this time the wedding went perfectly. Sophia walked down the aisle in a simple but elegant dress, her sister Maria as maid of honor. Cameron waited at the altar, his eyes shining with tears of joy. Mrs. Reynolds sniffled in the front row, while Patricia beamed proudly. In his prison cell, Alexander watched the society page coverage with bitter rage. And somewhere the spirits of Richard Lancaster and Eleanor smiled down on their children, knowing that love had finally healed their family's wounds. As Cameron and Sophia shared their first dance as husband and wife, she whispered, I can't believe we made it. I always knew we would, Cameron replied. Some love stories are just meant to be. The end. But in a safe deposit box in Switzerland, a set of mysterious bonds waited to be discovered. And in a small cafe in Paris, a woman who looked remarkably like an aged Bianca sipped coffee and planned her revenge. Because in the world of the Lancasters, no ending is ever truly final. There's always another chapter waiting to unfold.